In this video, I'm going to be vibe coding with the newly released Claude Sonnet 4.6. This was a model that released yesterday from Anthropic, and so far I am very impressed. I was able to use this model extensively yesterday, and so far I have a lot to say about it. I've already put it through the BridgeBench, I've put it through the creative HTML test, and I have a lot to talk about and show you in this video. We are going to be looking at benchmarks, we are going to be putting it through production vibe coding tasks to really give this model a fair shake, and by the end of this video I will share whether or not it is BridgeMind certified. With that being said, if you haven't already liked, subscribed, or joined the Discord, make sure you do so. There's a link in the description down below to join the fastest growing vibe coding community on the internet right now. And with that being said, let's get right into the video. All right, so the first thing that I want to do is actually take a look at this model inside of OpenRouter, see how fast it's running from Anthropic, check out the price and compare it a little bit with Opus 4.6. So right away you can see the million context window. That's pretty good, but that was expected from this model. We also can see a $3 per million on the input and a $15 per million on the output. That is the same exact pricing as Sonnet 4.5. If we compare this now to Opus 4.6, you're talking about a 1 million in context with Opus 4.6, and then the price $5 and $25 respectively. So you're talking about like close to a 40% cost reduction when talking about Sonnet compared to Opus. So you're talking about a 40% cost reduction. The question really is okay, how much of a speed up is Sonnet compared with Opus? And we can see that here. So here you can see that from Anthropic. Anthropic is putting out this model at 40 tokens per second. And with Opus, you're looking at 32 tokens per second. So what even is that? A 25% speed up, I believe. So you're talking about a 25% speed up when comparing Sonnet versus Opus, which is pretty good. Get 25% faster. And then if you look at the latency 1.22 seconds versus 2.25 seconds. So it almost cuts the latency as half. So this is a more performant model for sure. And then you're talking about a little bit more of a price reduction. But something I do want to emphasize is that if you guys remember, Claude Sonnet 4.5 was very, very popular. And the reason that it was popular is that at the time that Claude Sonnet 4.5 was the best model that Anthropic had, it was when Opus 4.1 was the leading Opus model, okay? And something I want to highlight here that some people may forget is that the reason that Sonnet 4.5 was so much better at that time, which was what, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago at that point, the reason it was so much better is that it had this price, $3 per million and $15 per million, while the leading Opus model was $15 per million and $75 per million. So this was a 5x increase in price to use Opus models, but that's no longer the case, right? And the point that I want to make here that everybody needs to understand is, if you guys remember when Sonnet 4.5 was like by far the best model that everybody was using, that was when Opus was way more expensive, and they really reduced the price for Opus. So that makes it a little bit more, that brings in the debate, it makes the debate a little bit hotter for, hey, should you use Sonnet or should you use Opus? So with that being said, let's now take a look at the benchmarks and look at the improvement from Sonnet 4.5 to 4.6. So here it is. You can see the Terminal Bench 2.0. You're looking at an 8.1% improvement. Agentic coding, SWE-Bench verified. This is the most important coding benchmark that I always look at. And here they were able to get a 2.4% improvement, which is okay. But you're talking about it's still 1.2% worse than Opus 4.6. So in terms of coding, you're still looking at that Opus 4.6 and saying, okay, this model is more capable there. Now, if you do compare this in the agentic computer use, it's just right up there with Opus 4.6. It does very good with computer use. And if we actually go to the blog that Anthropic put out, they emphasized computer use a lot in this blog. Look at this. They actually emphasized this first. They said, almost every organization has software it can't easily automate, specialized systems and tools built before modern interfaces like APIs existed. To have AI use software, users would previously have had to build bespoke connectors, but a model that can use a computer the way a person does changes that equation. So this is something that I've talked about previously on live streams and in my channel, is just the fact that hey, computer use is coming. That's the reason that I think OpenClaw is such a big deal, is that computer use is going to become a much bigger deal in the future. You're going to have isolated environments, and these AI agents are going to be using these computers. Look at Sonnet 3.5 in October 2024 compared to where Sonnet 4.6 is now. Look at that, 14.9 compared to 72.5, which is just insane. So take note of that. Also, they did put out, look at this, the agentic financial analysis, that beat out. The office tasks, it also beat out. It did perform very well in agentic tool use, right up there with Opus 4.6. So this model is on par with Opus 4.6. It's not better than it. You know, we've seen Sonnet models, like Sonnet 4.5 was better than the Opus model that existed at the time. You're like, okay, use Sonnet 4.5, right? But now that we have Opus 4.6, with the price that we're getting it at, you know, you're only talking about a 40% price reduction and then a 25% speed improvement. So that does kind of bring into the equation, what should you be using? Look at novel problem solving. Opus 4.6, 10% higher, 10.5% higher than Sonnet 4.6. So there's a lot that you can look at here and say, okay, Opus 4.6 is still a really capable model that is better than Sonnet 4.6. So you have to weigh, okay, do I want that improvement in speed, but do I also want to have that at a price reduction, right? So like you just have to ask yourself that question. Another thing that they emphasized is that users preferred Sonnet 4.6 to Opus 4.5, their frontier model from November, 59% of the time. This is really interesting that they said this. So 59% of the time, people actually preferred this model, and they rated it as significantly less prone to over-engineering and laziness. So that's very, very interesting. It means that it's better at instruction following, okay? So that's another important thing. Also, look at this, guys. So if you guys are familiar with the Vending bench, this is a really trending benchmark. The Vending bench, look at how it performed. Sonnet 4.6 outperforms Sonnet 4.5 on Vending Bench Arena by investing in capacity early, then pivoting to profitability in the final stretch. Look at how it performed. 6,000 versus like barely over 2,000. So it was like close to 3x more performant, which is insane. So you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, look at the difference between Sonnet 4.5 and 4.6. Like that's actually a pretty noticeable difference. And what we want to look at is we now want to look at the BridgeBench, and we want to see, okay, how does this model actually perform in our own personal benchmarks? And what we've done is we've created BridgeBench to do that. And I want to emphasize that I have now indexed this in BridgeBench. You guys can go check it out. If you go to BridgeMind, just go to community, go to BridgeBench. There's also going to be a link in the description down below. But check out how this performed. So here's Claude Opus 4.6. Here's Claude Sonnet 4.6. Here is the entire ranking. So you can see here's GLM 5, here's Qwen 3.5, here's Minimax M2.5, here's GPT 5.2 Codex. So Claude Sonnet 4.6 outperforms GPT 5.2 Codex. It does better in completions. It also is faster. So here you can see that the total time, and I'm going to change up the formatting of this, but the total time for Sonnet 4.6 to complete this benchmark was 924 seconds. Whereas with Opus 4.6, it was 983 seconds. And with GPT 5.2 Codex, it took 2,245 seconds. So that's where, you know, with these Anthropic models, they're so much more performant in speed. And I will say that they did improve this with GPT 5.3 Codex. They improved the speed, but this model, we can't benchmark it yet since it's not available in OpenRouter or the API. The next thing I want to take a look at is the creative HTML benchmark. So this is a benchmark that we use to be able to actually look at UI comparisons. So the first one is the lava lamp. So let's go take a look at the lava lamp that Sonnet 4.6 produced. Here it is right here. So this is the lava lamp produced by Sonnet 4.6. You guys can make your judgments on this. Let's go back over to Opus 4.6 and look at this. So here's Opus 4.6. Here is Sonnet 4.6. So definitely different approaches. I don't know what you guys think is better, but here's the lava lamp. Another one that I like to take a look at is the retro Space Invaders. This is probably my favorite one to look at. Here's how Opus 4.6 performed. I think it did very well on this creative HTML test, but let's take a look at how Sonnet 4.6 performed. Let's take a look at it here. Sonnet 4.6, and I did post this on X, and a lot of people were saying that they thought that Sonnet 4.6 did a better job because it followed the instructions. Look at the alien behind. It like added in a boss. It added in a really, just the spaceship down there at the bottom is a little bit better styled. It did make it more retro. So you're seeing the styling, and the styling so far is pretty impressive. So in terms of styling, I think that this is a very capable model for styling. Let's go check out if it is in Design Arena. Let's go over here and check out Design Arena AI. Let's go see if it's in Design Arena yet. I actually don't know if it's in Design Arena. Let's check the leaderboards though. So Sonnet, it is in Design Arena. Look at this. So Sonnet 4.6 performs 1338. So it is behind Opus 4.6. So Opus 4.6 got 1397. The thinking version got 1373, and then GLM5 got 1354, and then Sonnet 4.6 performed fourth. It got fourth place with 1338. So that's actually interesting. It did perform worse than GLM5, but still up there, highly outperforming Gemini 3 Pro and way outperforming GPT 5.2 High. So that gives you guys a look at the UI and the styling there. I think that even though like it is 1338, you know, you are bringing into the account of like, okay, it is more affordable, it's faster. That is very important to note. Also, another important benchmark that I do want to pull up is the artificial analysis. This is one of the most important benchmarks that I look at. So let's see, it should be benchmarked. Let's take a look and just make sure real quick. So here is the artificial intelligence. This is a really important benchmark. Let's see if it's indexed here. Let's go to Sonnet 4.6. It is here. So here it is, adaptive reasoning. And then let's also add GPT 5.2 to the mix as well. I think I turned it off by accident. So let's see here. Sonnet, oh my gosh, guys, look at this. Sonnet 4.6 Max is ranked #1. That is insane. So it actually outperforms, or I guess it's tied, but I guess it's outperforming here. Maybe it did a little bit better, so it's outperforming. But look at this, Sonnet 4.6 on the intelligence index outperforms Opus 4.5. And let's take a look at Opus 4.6 and add that to the equation. So here's Opus 4.6. So it is under Opus 4.6. And again, that's what we're seeing is we're seeing, whereas with Sonnet 4.5 versus Opus 5 or Opus 4, Sonnet 4.5 was a better model at that time, right? But what we're seeing is that Opus 4.6 is actually still outperforming Sonnet 4.6, which is actually a good thing. If we go to the coding index, let's take a look there. Wow, look at this, guys. So on the coding index, this is big. So on the coding index, Sonnet 4.6 is the best performing model in the artificial intelligence analysis coding index. Look at this, 49 and then 51. So this is the highest performing model in the artificial analysis coding index. I definitely need to make an X post about that because that's a big deal. This is a high value index. So we want to take a look at this now. Oh my gosh. Agentic index, it absolutely performs really well. Let's add, is GLM5 added to this index as well? Because I know GLM5 performs very well on this one as well. Let's add it. So GLM5 performs well on this agentic index, but look at this. It destroys GPT 5.2, and again, a little bit under Opus 4.6 Max, but look at that, 63. That's very, very performant. Another thing that we want to take a look at is the hallucination index. So let's scroll down a little bit and take a look at that. That is the index that measures the hallucination rate. So let's take a look at this. Wow, chat. Look at this, 38% on the hallucination index. This is insane. So if you look at Opus 4.6, that's at 60%. And on this benchmark, the lower the score, the better. And look at that, 38%. So that is a 10% reduction in the hallucination rate from Sonnet 4.5. So that is very, very impressive. That's something to look at, right? Hallucination rate is very, very important. You know, a big problem with Gemini models is that they hallucinate all over the place, right? Like, where even is Gemini 3 Pro? Look at that, 88%. And something that we see with these Anthropic models is that they do have very good hallucination rates, right? Meaning lower hallucination. You look at GPT 5.2 extra high, 78%, where now, look at this, Sonnet 4.6, 38%. So this model is going to hallucinate less than Opus 4.6, and that is going to make it more reliable. So you're talking about a model that's going to be more reliable, that's faster, that's cheaper. This model has a lot of potential, guys, and that's going to summarize the benchmark review. And now I want to move on to actually using this model inside of Claude Code and talking to you guys about what I saw yesterday in my session, my vibe coding session at a vibe coding no talking stream. And I also was using this model when it initially launched during my vibe coding in app until I make $1 million series. So with that being said, let's launch Claude Code and actually start vibe coding with this model. All right, guys, so I have Bridge Voice and BridgeSpace launched. These are two tools in our vibe coding suite that I'm going to be now using in order to vibe code with Sonnet 4.6. You can see Bridge Voice is a very good voice to text tool, and BridgeSpace is a great ADE agentic development environment to be able to manage an agent swarm. So you can see I have 16 Sonnet 4.6 agents open, and I have my voice to text tool, and I'm just gonna start working like I normally would in production, and you guys can follow along as I put this to the test. But for a minute here, I'm just gonna put all of this to the test. So watch this. The first thing I'm going to do is drop in BridgeBench. I need you to review BridgeBench and take note of the new speed test bench that we have. What current results do we have coming out of the speed test? Are there any models that have completed the speed test? So we're going to drop this in, and then we're also going to go over here, and we're going to drop in the BridgeMind UI. I need you to do an in-depth review, launch 3 sub-agents to be able to review this website and review it in terms of the performance for Lighthouse, and make sure that this website is optimized for speed and performance as well as for SEO. Do an in-depth deep dive and analyze it, and then tell me your findings with these 3 sub-agents. So I'm going to drop these in here. I'm then going to go over here, and I'm going to drop in Bridge Voice. I need you to do an in-depth review of the customized scroll bar that is in this application. I need you to make sure that it has an on-theme scroll bar for this app that works well both on Windows and Mac and Linux. I also need you to make sure that that top header looks good and is customized for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So let's now do that. So it looks like only one model has the results so far, Anthropic. So what I need to do now is I'm going to drop in BridgeMind UI. I need you to review this website and go to the BridgeBench page and add this as a toggle for the speed test bench, where we will be able to display the leaderboards for the fastest models. Please create this new toggle in the BridgeBench page and then update accordingly. Add this Sonnet 4.6 model to the leaderboard there. So we're going to pass this in, and just for reference, so you guys can see what that is doing. So if we go over here and we actually go over to localhost, what you guys are going to see is that we can go to BridgeBench, which I kind of showed you guys earlier, but you can now, it already added the speed bench. And wow, so it already did that. That's actually really impressive. So let's now go over here and let's drop in another prompt. So let's drop in Bridge Voice. I do have an issue with Bridge Voice locally. I need you to launch 3 sub-agents to do an in-depth review of Bridge Voice. We made some updates recently when we added in the ability to be able to toggle the view of the widget between logo only versus having the logo and Bridge Voice for the widget pill. And now the widget pill is no longer showing when I initially launched Bridge Voice. Would you launch 3 sub-agents to do an in-depth deep dive to figure out why the widget pill is no longer displaying on Mac? Do an in-depth deep dive and figure out what is causing this, and then implement a fix so that it does display on launch. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to launch another agent. This one is for Bridge. Actually, I can't do that because we're using it locally right now. So let's see this one. So these agents are all working right now. This one is doing a look there. And then I'm also going to do a follow prompt on this one. I need you to look at the models that we have tested in OpenRouter, like GLM5, Minimax M2.5, and I now need you to launch sub-agents for each of these models that we have not put through the speed bench. And I need you to benchmark these models and then output their results respectively, but launch sub-agents for each model that we have not yet put through the speed bench yet. So we're going to put all those models. I'm just going to send that there. We're also going to launch here. And I will say that so far what I am finding is that this is noticeably, like I was using this last night, and this model is very fast and it is reliable. You know, when you look at that hallucination rate, one thing that I can say for certain is that it is very reliable. It's a very reliable model. It's cheap, it's fast. I need you to create an agent team that is built around identifying AI slop code and ways that we are able to improve performance in BridgeMind API. You need to create a team that will be able to evaluate the API, which is a Nest.js application, and this team will be able to work together to identify findings that we can improve the code without breaking functionality, improve performance without breaking functionality. Launch this team and output your findings, and then using that same team, I need you to implement fixes, again, without breaking any functionality. So let's also paste that in. So that is going to create a team. So we'll put teams to the test. And one thing with teams is that, you know, Claude Code, they released teams, and teams was something that I said, hey, this is going to be useful, but Claude Opus 4.6 is just a little bit too expensive to actually get the use out of teams. So with Sonnet, the interesting part about Sonnet is that Sonnet is a 40% cost reduction. So with that 40% cost reduction, that is going to make teams a little bit more usable, because with Opus, if you launch a team, it's going to max out your usage immediately. But with Sonnet, it's, you're looking at 40% cost reduction, so you're just going to get way more use out of your plan, right? And it's right up there in performance. It's even better with the hallucination rate. So definitely something to take note of. Let's launch BridgeMind API, and I already put it in. I need you to run the test suite and fix any failing tests. Let's launch this one. So you can see that team is now being created. Let's now go over here and drop in another one here. And I'm going to drop in the BridgeMind web app and the BridgeMind UI. I need you to do an analysis of the onboarding flow, and I need you to make sure that the styling is polished and that it is accurate and flows well with best practices. So let's drop this in. Another interesting thing that we have is this one is now done. So this one is giving us the lighthouse performance 72 to 78. The target is 90 plus. So total estimated hour 30 to 40 hours for full implementation. So with Sonnet 4.6, this should probably take about 10 minutes. So I now need you to output all of the findings so that we can get our lighthouse score to improve, run the test, and then create a structured README file with everything that is needed so that we can create documentation and then be able to start improvements. But first, you need to create this README, you need to run the test, and then create the README respectively. Okay, so let's paste that in now, and then I'm going to go over here, and I have an interesting problem here, which is the URLs when I'm redirecting with BridgeSpace and BridgeVoice. So check out the URLs here. So you can see this one redirected to this this port, and then this desktop code. It's not a very friendly URL, and what I want to do is I want to improve the URL redirects for both BridgeSpace and BridgeVoice without impacting the auth functionality. So I'm going to drop in both of these redirects, and I'm going to paste this in. I'm going to say, I want you to take a look at the URLs that I get sent to when using the auth flow for both BridgeSpace and BridgeVoice. Take a look at these URLs. And then also, can I get this? Can I go back one? So yeah, I want to go back one too, so that it can take a look at like the other step, because I think that this can be improved. And this is a little bit more of a difficult and nuanced task. It's a little bit weird, right? So let's drop this in. So we have BridgeVoice, BridgeSpace, and you can see that even in the BridgeVoice, it says electron redirect, right? That's not necessarily correct, right? It's a little bit outdated. So let's now pass in BridgeVoice, and let's also pass in BridgeSpace Tari. And what we're now going to do is we're going to say, I want you to do a deep dive on the redirect URLs and the auth flow for both BridgeSpace and BridgeVoice. Think through best practices for creating a user-friendly URL system. You can see that for BridgeVoice, it has electron redirect, even though this isn't even an electron application. So there's some issues there. It would be really nice if we could optimize the URLs to be user-friendly and follow best practices. Launch 3 subagents and search the internet for the best practices for this. And then I need you to create a structured plan for updates that will not break functionality, but will update the URLs and this auth flow to have URLs that are more user-friendly and follow best practices. So I also need to drop in the BridgeMind UI. And again, we are currently using BridgeVoice and BridgeSpace, which are tools in our vibe coding tool suite. You can currently subscribe to BridgeMind Pro for 50% off your first 3 months. So $10 a month for your first 3 months. You can go to bridgemind.ai and learn more. But these products are getting closer and closer to shipping. They already are in production for macOS and Windows, and we're getting to more stable releases. But these products are going to be very helpful for vibe coders, and I use them daily in my workflow. So it said create a match pattern here. So this is the recommendation. So these are all the issues that it found. So I want you to launch subagents that will implement updates for each in the best practice way that will not break functionality, but will implement the fixes accordingly. So we're going to now pass that in. It looks like all tests, so 2,208 tests are all passing, so we don't need to worry about that. Let's see this here. So we are passing these tests. It looks like, let's look at the speed test here. So Aurora Alpha, 258 tokens per second. Claude Sonnet 4.6, 63 tokens per second. So here on the speed test, this actually was running at 63 tokens per second. So even though it said 40 tokens per second, in my speed test, I got 63.8 tokens per second, which is absolutely nuts inside of of OpenRouter inside of the BridgeBench speed test. So that's one thing to look at there. 63 tokens per second. I'm very interested to see what we get out of Opus 4.6. It looks like Quen 3.5 was at 51, and then a couple more are still running. I need you to add Opus 4.6 to this as well. So let's do this as well. We'll get the results from Opus 4.6. Here, these agents are analyzing. And what I will say about using this model is, yesterday I was using it, I'm using it right now, and what I will say is I notice it being more reliable. I notice the hallucination rate being lower. I notice it being faster, and I notice it being able to one-shot. So in terms of talking about this model and whether you should be using it, whether it has the BridgeMind stamp of approval, boom, BridgeMind stamp of approval. I will say I can tell that this is a good model just after using it. This is something that you want to start implementing in your workflow. That 40% cost reduction and the speed increase for this model is very impressive. It's noticeable. You're going to notice it when you're launching teams. You're going to notice it when you're using sub-agents. You know, if you go to, this is another thing that I wanted to talk about. If you go to model, right, this is something that you guys need to know about. So the model menu has changed for Claude Code. So check this out. So select model, switch between Claude models. So the default recommended is Opus 4.6. This is the most capable model for complex work. And you now have the ability to, this is new with yesterday's deployment of Sonnet 4.6. They also shipped this. So now you can choose the 1 million in context for Opus 4.6. But look at this. Its build is extra usage. Do you guys see this? So I don't know why they necessarily did this. This is weird. So they have the default, right? But then they also have the 1 million in context, and then that's billed as extra usage. And I don't know why they did that. So if you want to get absolutely taxed, you can select the 1 million in context, and then it's the same thing for Sonnet. So you can choose Sonnet, and it says best for everyday tasks, and then you can also choose Sonnet 1M, and it said build as extra usage. And this is actually billed at a higher price, so $6 per million and $22.50 per million. You know, that's something interesting, and it's a little bit misleading, if I'm being completely honest, because you're looking at OpenRouter, right? And if you go over to OpenRouter, what we're going to see is you look at it and you're like, oh, 1 million in context, $3 per million on the input, $15 per million on the output. That's great. But then in Claude Code, for some reason, they're making these 1 million in context models basically unusable because they're not even allowing you to use it with your plan. They're billing it as extra usage. So this is something I wanted to highlight. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comment section down below, is what is this model even running at, right? Like Sonnet, can I even ask it? Like, could I switch over here and could I say, what is the context window on this model? Will it respond? Will it let us know? Because 1 million in context is like great, right? Wow. Okay, this is actually something new that we just learned, guys. So Sonnet 4.6, if you're using it just normally without having it set to this 1 million in context, it has a 200,000 context window. That is actually a little bit, I'm going to dock it a little bit here. This is not good. This is not a good approach. So they're billing it for a higher price with more cost per token. You're unable to use the 1 million in context with your plan, and the normal default mode only has a 200,000 in context. Like, that's really, really interesting, because if you look at Gemini, obviously Gemini models, they all have 1 million, they have over 1 million in context, and this is just, hey, if you're using Gemini 3 Pro, it's using that by default, right? Same thing with GPT, I can only look at GPT 5.2, but GPT 5.2 Codex, this one has a context of 400,000, right? And that's like, so it's 2x. So that's one thing that I'm gonna kind of dock against Claude Code, is I don't necessarily know why they're doing that. I'm still going to approve the model. I'm going to be using this, but why is it that they're not offering us this model with the 1 million in context window with our plan? That's just a little bit weird, right? So let's go back over here, and it looks like these are still running. We have the speed test going up. This one is all fixed, and this is very, very fast. Great work. I now need you to launch sub-agents that will implement the fixes without breaking functionality or writing AI slop code. So these are all working. Let's launch this one. Let's see how this one is doing. So it does have a plan here. So what did it say? So what changes does it want to make? So it says change URL. Which one? How is it going to change the URL? Output a table of your plan. Show me the URL before and then show me what you're going to change it to. So let's go here and let's just kind of make sure that that looks right. But that's definitely one thing to note, is that this model selector is a little bit odd. I don't know what you guys think about this, but definitely something that we want to take note of, right? Go ahead and implement it. So I'm going to implement that, but even with this context window drawback, I still am noticing some differences and some improvements, and now it does bring Sonnet back into the equation. You know, with Sonnet models, if you guys remember Sonnet 4.5, before we got Opus 4.5, Sonnet 4.5 was by far the best coding model on the market, and then we got Opus 4.5. Everybody forgot about Sonnet 4.5, but Sonnet 4.6, this is a significant improvement for the Sonnet suite, and it comes at a 40% cost reduction with about a 25% speed increase. So definitely something that you guys are going to be seeing me working on and working with in my vibe coding workflows. And with that being said, guys, I'm going to give it the BridgeMind stamp of approval. I hope this helped you guys, and you guys are going to see me using this in streams. And with that being said, if you haven't already liked, subscribed, and joined the Discord, make sure you do so, and I will see you guys in the future.